For joining me. All right, so next question. So this is a question that I saw posted in a Facebook group, and I'll go ahead and read the question first. It says, after I get my offer signed by a seller, do I take it to title for them to open and start everything, or do I find my buyer first and then get them to open the case with title? The reason I ask is because if I start everything with title and buyer disappears, then am I not the one responsible for the title company costs? And then someone responded to this and they said, unless agreed upon otherwise, title gets paid when it closes. This is one thing I really want to caution you guys with, is that there are a lot of groups and a lot of really good groups I recommend on wholesaling or real estate investing, and I do recommend that you join all of them. I'm a part of a good majority of these groups. And the thing is, these groups are oftentimes hosted by very reputable and big name wholesalers. So Max Maxwell, that's an example. I'm a member of his group, right? So Max obviously has been doing this thing for years. He knows what he's doing. But when you ask questions like this in these groups, oftentimes the admins or moderators, they may not check everything, or they may not be the ones answering. And for whatever reason, sometimes some people just don't know any better. Sometimes people are trolling. I can't speak to their motivation, but sometimes people will give information and it's either misleading, it's out of context, it's not completely accurate. Sometimes it's just dead ass wrong, right? And so in this situation, the person that asked this question, they were like, oh, thanks so much. Now I know I won't be stuck with the bill. And that's not entirely true. And again, every title company will work with you a little bit differently. So this is why you really want to find an investor friendly and wholesaler friendly, specifically title company, build rapport, and ideally do a lot of business with them. But in most cases, what happens is, and my recommendation is this, you ideally want to find your buyer first. So what you can do, you can get your paperwork signed, buyer, seller, and then now that you are under contract, you have that equitable interest, you can start to market your deal. All right. And at that point, once you find your end buyer, and you're going to ask them to make sure they're serious, you're going to vet them a little bit, and then eventually you'll ask them to put up an earnest money deposit, non-refundable, 0-day inspection period. And sometimes it's at your discretion if you want to put up and risk funds and earnest money deposits. That's typically not how I teach this, especially to my beginners. Keep everything completely risk-free. But also you'll have your inspection period and things like that. And then once you have your end buyer in place, you can send in all the paperwork. The other thing you can do, and sometimes if you're dealing with a savvy either seller or maybe a realtor, they might go ahead and send your contract, your executed contract, into the title company as well. So your title company needs to know that you're wholesaling the deal. And what I recommend is that you go to your title company, just shoot them a quick email and let them know, hey, I'm wholesaling this deal. Buyer's still on the fence. Don't start the title work just yet. Because what happens is, when the title company starts to run title, there are fees that are associated with that. Granted, when you get to the closing, there's additional fees and there's doc stamps and things like that to get paid. So, if the deal does fall through, you're not going to be responsible for those fees because the deal is not closing. However, when a title company goes ahead and runs that title search, when they're running those that lien search, there are fees associated with them, and they're incurring that cost. And so if the deal falls out of place, I know everyone's going to tell you, well, you shouldn't be doing deals if they're going to fall through. Listen, it's not ideal, obviously, and I'm not recommending you do that. And it is not a good thing to cancel, but it does happen. And in the cases where that does happen, you will be responsible for something. Sometimes it can be a very small fee, $120. If you're willing to take that kind of risk, a very small amount of money, then you can for sure do that. But in the case of someone giving this type of advice, that is not always accurate. Now I have had situations, I've had deals fall through, and then, my title company just be like, hey, Mike, don't even worry about it. And that's because we have that rapport. We're doing business together and stuff like that. So it's not really that, not that it's not a big deal, but people do you favors in the business. But in that case, they're not obligated to, and you can be responsible for some of those fees. So the other takeaway besides, the fact that you could be responsible is just really vet your information, validate it, maybe get second opinions, or make sure you're talking to someone who actually knows what they're doing. All right.